the channel where we explore powerful ideas to help you think in English, speak with confidence, and connect with the world through deeper, more meaningful conversations. Whether you're on your way to work, taking a walk, or simply taking a break, I'm glad you're here, and I invite you to listen not just with your ears, but with your mind and your heart. Today, we're going to explore something that affects all of us, whether we realize it or not. Social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or X as it's now called, TikTok, YouTube, even WhatsApp. These platforms have become a huge part of modern life. They've changed the way we communicate, how we get our information, and how we see ourselves. But here's the big question. Are we using social media, or is social media using us? Think about your own habits. What's the first thing you look at when you wake up? What's the last thing you see before you fall asleep? How often do you check your phone during the day just out of habit? These small behaviors may seem harmless, but over time they shape our thinking, our attention, and even our self-worth. This episode isn't about blaming technology or deleting all your accounts. It's not black or white. It's about understanding, really understanding what role social media plays in our daily lives and in our internal world. Because whether we like it or not, social media is no longer just a tool. It's a mirror. But here's the twist. It's a mirror we've edited, filtered, and sometimes distorted. Which brings us to one of the biggest questions we'll reflect on today. Is social media shaping who we are, or simply showing who we've become? That question might sound philosophical, but it's actually very practical. It touches your sense of identity, your mood, your relationships, your beliefs. And if you're learning English at this level, C1, I know you're not just here for grammar or vocabulary. You're here to express yourself clearly, powerfully, and honestly in a second language. And to do that, you need topics that connect to real life, to how we live, think, and feel. So today, we'll go beyond the surface. We'll talk about habits, emotions, algorithms, identity, mental health, and conscious choices. We'll explore how social media influences our attention, our communication, and our personal growth, and what we can do to take back control. Along the way, I'll be using natural spoken English, the kind you'd hear in a thoughtful conversation. You'll hear idiomatic phrases, expressive collocations, and reflective questions, all designed to help you expand your range and develop fluency in a meaningful context. Now, take a deep breath. This is your time to reflect, to listen deeply, and to grow both in English and in awareness. Let's begin. A day in the life. How social media sneaks in. Let's take a moment and walk through a typical day. Not a special day, not a holiday, not a stressful work deadline day, just a regular one. The alarm goes off. Your eyes are still adjusting to the light. And before your feet even touch the floor, your hand reaches almost automatically for your phone. It's not a decision. It's not a plan. It just happens. The screen lights up. You check the time, swipe through the notifications, maybe scroll for a few minutes. A few minutes turns into 10, then 20. Before you know it, you're already processing information from other people's lives, their photos, their stories, their updates. You haven't even spoken a word to yourself yet. You haven't had a thought that was truly your own, and yet your mind is already occupied. This is how social media sneaks in quietly, casually, like background noise that slowly becomes the main soundtrack. It's not that we choose to give it so much attention, it simply becomes a habit. And like any habit, the more we repeat it, the more it becomes invisible. It becomes normal. Now think about the rest of the day. Maybe you're getting ready for work or class. Maybe you're eating breakfast, your phone is nearby. Always. You get a message, a short video, a new post. Without thinking, you unlock the screen. You scroll. Just for a second, you tell yourself. But what starts as a second becomes a distraction, then a detour, then a drain. Your focus disappears, your thoughts get interrupted, and worst of all, you don't even notice it happening. The term for this behavior is now widely used, doom scrolling. It means endlessly scrolling through negative or emotionally heavy content, especially news, without any real purpose. But doom scrolling doesn't always feel negative at first. Sometimes it feels like you're staying informed. Sometimes it feels like you're relaxing. But behind that surface, your brain is absorbing a constant stream of stimulation without pause, without reflection, without control. Have you ever picked up your phone just to check one thing and then looked up 30 minutes later, unsure of how the time disappeared? That's not a failure of willpower. That's design. These apps are carefully engineered to keep you engaged. Notifications are timed to catch your attention. Algorithms are built to predict what will hold your eyes the longest. It's not personal. It's business. And your attention is the product. Now, let's look a little deeper, because this isn't just about time. It's about thought. Every time you scroll, every time you like, share, or react, your mind is forming tiny habits. Your focus becomes fragmented. Your thoughts become shorter, faster, more reactive. You start thinking in quick comments and short clips. Over time, this constant switching trains your brain to prefer surface-level content. It becomes harder to sit with complexity, to be still with your own thoughts, or to read deeply. And without realizing it, your mental rhythm, the natural flow of your attention and reflection, is reshaped by what you consume. This isn't meant to sound dramatic. It's just reality. And it's important to see it clearly, because once we become aware of something, we can change our relationship with it. But that awareness has to start with an honest question. So let me ask you, how many minutes or hours of your day do you give away without realizing it? Not because someone forced you, not because you made a clear decision, but because the habit was already there, because the system was already built. And here's the most surprising part. Many people, especially adults, say they don't really enjoy scrolling anymore. They do it out of routine, out of boredom, or just because it's what everyone else is doing. Social media has become like a reflex, something we do when we're waiting in line, when we're tired, when we feel awkward, or even when we feel anxious. It promises connection, but often delivers distraction. It offers comfort, but sometimes brings comparison. And in the end, the day feels busier, the mind feels louder, and we feel more tired, even if we haven't done anything physical. So what do we do with all of this? We don't panic. We don't delete everything and run to the mountains. Instead, we pause. We become aware. We observe ourselves with curiosity, not judgment. Because once you begin to see how deeply social media is woven into your daily life, you can begin to decide how you want that relationship to look. You can bring consciousness to your habits, your choices, your time. It all begins by noticing that a quick scroll has become an automatic behavior, noticing that your thoughts are often shaped by what you've just seen online. Noticing that time, that beautiful, limited, powerful thing called time, is slipping through your fingers, not because you chose to waste it, but because you didn't even see it going. So today, just observe, not with guilt, but with awareness. How often do you reach for your phone? How long do you stay there? How do you feel before and after? These small questions can open big doors, because when we see clearly, we can choose differently. And that's where change begins. The double-edged sword, connection versus comparison. Let's talk about one of the biggest contradictions of our time, something that almost all of us feel, but few of us fully understand. Thanks to social media, we've never been more connected. We can message someone on the other side of the world in seconds. We can see into people's lives, their birthdays, their weddings, their trips, their everyday moments, without even being in the same country. We can follow our favorite artists, writers, speakers, thinkers, and yet many people feel lonelier than ever before. How is that possible? How can we be constantly surrounded by connection and still feel isolated? Here's the thing. Social media is a double-edged sword. On one side, it offers incredible opportunities for communication, inspiration, and creativity. But on the other side, it can quietly create a sense of disconnection, not only from others, but from ourselves. And at the heart of that Disconnection is a subtle emotional pattern. Comparison. You've probably heard the phrase, comparison is the thief of joy. And nowhere is that more obvious than on social media. You scroll through your feed and see a friend celebrating a promotion. Someone else is on vacation, perfect beach, perfect weather, perfect smile. Another person just bought a house or got married or published a book. And then there's you sitting in your kitchen, tired, maybe in your pajamas, wondering if your life is falling behind. Even if you were feeling fine before, suddenly you start doubting yourself. Am I doing enough? Am I successful enough? Am I interesting enough? This is the danger of curated realities. What we see online is not the full picture. It's the highlight reel. Just like a sports clip that only shows the goals, not the missed shots or the hours of training. Most people share only their best moments, the good lighting, the good news, the carefully chosen caption. There's nothing wrong with that. We all want to present our lives in a positive light, but when we compare our real life with all its ups and downs to someone else's edited version, we create an unfair comparison, and that can lead to FOMO, the fear of missing out. FOMO is more than just a trendy term. It's an emotional experience that triggers feelings of inadequacy, anxiety, and even sadness. You see others doing things you're not doing, living a life you're not living, and suddenly what you have doesn't feel like enough. It's not that you've lost anything. It's just that the illusion of someone else's perfect life makes your own life feel smaller. But here's the truth that often gets lost. You're not seeing the full story. You're not seeing the behind the scenes. You're not seeing the tears, the doubts, the arguments, the insecurities. You're seeing what people choose to show. And that's often only a fraction of the truth. This pressure to keep up can push people to keep up appearances even when they're struggling. You might post something just because you feel like you should, not because it feels meaningful. Or you might measure your worth by likes, comments, and shares, forgetting that those numbers don't reflect your real value. This constant chase for validation, for digital applause, can leave you feeling emotionally drained, even if your feed looks full of joy. And here's another question to consider. How many of your online connections actually feel like real connections? You might have hundreds, even thousands of followers, but how many of them know what you're going through? How many people could you actually call if you were having a hard day? That's the paradox. We are more visible than ever, but sometimes we're less truly seen. Social media, in this sense, is a blessing and a curse. It gives us access to incredible people, ideas, and experiences. It helps us stay in touch with loved ones and discover communities we would never find otherwise. But if we're not careful, it also becomes a trap, one that makes us chase connection through comparison and forget the importance of depth, honesty, and emotional presence. So, what can we do? We can start by becoming aware of how we feel when we use social media. Does it uplift you or leave you feeling less than? Do you feel inspired or insecure? Are you posting because you want to share something meaningful or because you want to prove something? These aren't questions to judge yourself. They're questions to understand yourself. And understanding is the first step toward making conscious choices. Another useful practice is to remember this simple truth. You never see the whole picture. No matter how perfect someone's life looks online, there is always more behind the screen. Every person has struggles. Every smile has a story. Every image has a frame and something outside of it. You can also remind yourself that success and happiness aren't limited resources. Just because someone else is shining doesn't mean your light is any less bright. We're not in competition. We're all just trying to find our way. And real connection, the kind that nourishes your spirit, doesn't come from scrolling. It comes from presence, from vulnerability, from being fully honestly yourself online and offline. So the next time you find yourself falling into comparison, pause, breathe, come back to yourself. You're not behind. You're not missing out. You're on your own path. And that's enough. Shaping identity. Who are we becoming online? Let's pause for a moment and ask a very personal yet surprisingly universal question. Who are you online? Not just your name or username, but your digital identity. What parts of yourself do you choose to share? What parts do you keep hidden? What image are you building? Post by post, story by story. Social media gives us something that previous generations never had: the ability to shape and share our identity in real time. Every photo, every caption, every emoji is a small piece of a larger picture, a version of ourselves we're presenting to the world. But here's the interesting thing: that version may not always match who we are in real life. And sometimes the gap between our online self and our real self becomes larger than we'd like to admit. This brings us to an important distinction: authenticity versus performance. Authenticity means being true to who you are. It means showing up honestly without trying to impress or fit a mold. Performance, on the other hand, means playing a role. It's not necessarily fake, but it's often carefully managed. It's designed for effect, to entertain, to attract attention, to gain approval. Now think about your own experience. When you post something online, whether it's a photo, a thought, a video, or a reaction, what drives that choice? Is it a desire to express yourself or to be seen a certain way? Do you post who you are or who you wish to be? This question isn't meant to criticize, it's meant to reflect. Because the truth is, we all perform to some extent. We all edit. We all choose angles, filters, captions, and that's not inherently bad. It's part of being human in a digital world. But when the performance becomes a mask, when we start believing more in the character we play than the person we are, that's when we risk losing touch with our deeper self. It's easy to fall into this pattern. You get positive feedback on a certain kind of post, maybe something funny, glamorous, or emotional, and suddenly you feel pressure to repeat it. You start crafting your identity based on what others seem to like rather than what actually feels real to you. Over time, the online version of you can become a kind of character, carefully scripted and maintained, and yet behind the screen, you might feel something very different. Disconnected, unsure, maybe even exhausted by the effort of always needing to be someone. This kind of emotional disconnect can create subtle inner tension. You may look confident online, but feel insecure in private. You may sound joyful in your captions, but feel lost or anxious inside. And when people respond only to your highlight reel, it can deepen the feeling that no one really knows the full you. What's even more challenging is that social media often rewards performance over authenticity. Posts that are polished, dramatic, or perfectly timed often get more attention. The algorithm favors engagement, not truth. And this creates a strange situation. The more real you are, the more you risk being ignored. But the more you perform, the more visible you become, even if it doesn't feel honest. This raises a deeper question, not just for individuals, but for society as a whole. If our identities are shaped by what performs well online, what kind of people are we becoming? Are we learning to be more expressive or just more strategic? Are we building confidence or dependency on external validation? Some people start to notice that their sense of self becomes tied to their online presence. They check likes to feel valued. They compare their content to others to feel successful. And without meaning to, they hand over a piece of their identity to the digital world. Who they are begins to depend on how others react. And that's a fragile way to live. But here's the good news. Once we become aware of this pattern, we can choose differently. You can decide to use social media as a tool for authentic expression, not just performance. You can post things that matter to you, even if they don't get a lot of attention. You can take digital breaks to reconnect with your offline self. And most importantly, you can remind yourself that your worth is not defined by your digital image. Let me say that again. Your worth is not defined by your digital image, not by your followers, not by your likes, not by your comments. You are more than your profile. So ask yourself, what kind of digital identity am I creating? Does it reflect who I truly am or just who I think others want me to be? Does it help me feel more connected to myself or more confused about who I am? These are not easy questions, but they are important ones, especially in a world where identity is no longer private, where it's performed, observed, and evaluated 24/7. We need the courage to be honest, the awareness to reflect, and the wisdom to protect the parts of ourselves that don't need to be shared to be real. In the end, authenticity doesn't mean sharing everything. It means that what you do share is rooted in truth, your truth. And when you live from that place, both online and offline, you create a stronger, more peaceful sense of self, one that doesn't need to perform because it already belongs. Mental health and emotional well-being. Let's take a breath and shift the focus inward towards something that often gets pushed aside in conversations about social media, our mental health. In recent years, more and more people have begun to notice a quiet, growing sense of exhaustion, not physical, but mental. A kind of invisible tiredness that doesn't come from work or exercise, but from constant connection, constant input, and constant pressure to be seen, noticed, and validated. At first glance, social media seems harmless, even helpful. You open an app, scroll through some updates, like a few posts, maybe watch a short video. It feels like a break, a moment to relax. But over time, this seemingly light activity can lead to deeper emotional and cognitive consequences. And many of us only notice when the effects have already started to show up. Anxiety, reduced attention span, mood swings, difficulty sleeping, even a sense of disconnection from ourselves. One major factor is attention fatigue. Your brain, just like your body, has limits. It can only process so much information at once. But when you're constantly exposed to notifications, headlines, videos, messages, and comments, your attention becomes fragmented. You're pulled in 10 directions at once. And slowly, it becomes harder to concentrate, harder to finish tasks, and harder to enjoy simple, quiet moments. You begin to lose your mental presence, and your mind starts jumping from one thing to the next, not because you want to, but because it's been trained to do so. Another invisible pattern is related to something called the dopamine feedback loop. Dopamine is a chemical in the brain that's connected to motivation and reward. Every time you get a like, a message, or a new follower, your brain gets a little hit of dopamine. It feels good briefly, and so your brain starts to crave it. You check your phone more often, waiting for that next small reward. But like any short-term pleasure, the effect doesn't last. Over time, you need more frequent stimulation just to feel the same excitement. And if the rewards don't come, you may feel anxious or empty, even if you don't fully understand why. This loop is part of what keeps people scrolling late at night, even when they're exhausted. It's what makes sepant. You pick up your phone during a quiet moment instead of sitting with your thoughts. It's what turns a tool for connection into a cycle of dependence, not just on the platform, but on the feeling of being seen. Alongside these patterns, there's another issue that's harder to talk about: loneliness. It may sound strange, but social media can actually make people feel lonelier. Why? Because while it creates the illusion of connection, it doesn't always offer the depth or presence that real emotional connection requires. You might interact with dozens of people in a day, but still feel unseen. You might be liked by hundreds, but still feel unknown. This kind of shallow connection doesn't nourish the heart. It often leaves it even hungrier. And then there's cognitive overload, the feeling of having too much mental input and not enough emotional space to process it. News headlines, political opinions, endless content. Your brain is trying to sort through everything, but it can't catch up. This overload can lead to decision fatigue, emotional numbness, or even burnout. You stop asking yourself, "What do I think?" and start reacting automatically. You consume more but feel less. You respond more but reflect less. All of this contributes to what psychologists call limiting beliefs, subconscious ideas we begin to accept about ourselves, often shaped by comparison and repeated exposure to unrealistic standards. You might start believing you're not interesting enough, not attractive enough, not successful enough, not because it's true, but because you're constantly exposed to people who seem to have it all. The more we see others living better lives, the easier it is to question our own. These beliefs don't scream, they whisper, but over time they become part of our inner voice. So let me ask you something, and I encourage you to really pause and answer honestly, even if just in your mind. When was the last time you did something offline just for yourself? Not for the feed, not to share, not to prove, not to capture, but simply to enjoy. A walk with no photos, a meal with no post, a creative moment with no audience. If it's been a while, you're not alone. Many of us are so used to sharing everything that we forget how to be fully present with ourselves without the pressure to show it. Reclaiming that space, that simple offline space, is an act of self-care. It's not about deleting your apps or rejecting technology. It's about learning to protect your mental space and reconnect with your emotional needs. It's about giving your nervous system a break from the constant buzz of digital life and remembering that peace doesn't come from constant stimulation. It comes from depth, slowness, stillness. You can start small. Take a walk without your phone. Spend 10 minutes in silence before opening any apps. Write something by hand. Call a friend instead of messaging. These aren't solutions, they're starting points, but they help rebuild your sense of inner calm. And they remind your brain what it feels like to rest, focus, and connect deeply. Because at the end of the day, social media is not just a screen you look at. It's a space you live in mentally, emotionally, and socially. And like any space, it shapes you. So make sure it's a space where your well-being can breathe. Social media and society, echo chambers, and polarization. Whether we notice it or not, social media is no longer just a tool we use. It's become a lens through which we perceive the world, and at times even a mirror, reflecting our beliefs back to us. One of the most profound yet subtle ways this happens is through what we call echo chambers. Digital environments where users are primarily exposed to opinions and information that align with their existing views. Algorithms designed to keep us engaged study our likes, clicks, shares, and even how long we pause to watch a video. Based on this data, they curate our feeds, prioritizing content that resonates with us. While this personalization may seem convenient at first, it can gradually isolate us from differing perspectives, turning our feed into a one-sided stream of confirmation rather than a multifaceted space for critical thought. In this kind of environment, filter bubbles emerge. You begin to see the same kinds of opinions and narratives over and over again, creating an illusion that everyone thinks this way. But that's the trick. The algorithm isn't showing you the whole picture. It's showing you a tailored version of the world. This is not necessarily malicious, but the implications are serious. In a world that thrives on diverse thinking, being boxed into a digital echo chamber can narrow our intellectual horizons and make us more susceptible to groupthink, the psychological phenomenon where the desire for harmony or conformity in a group results in irrational or dysfunctional decisioning. As these bubbles solidify, polarization intensifies. It's not just that people disagree, it's that they start to dehumanize those on the other side of the spectrum. Online, disagreements often escalate into attacks. Nuance gets lost in translation. Emotional reactivity becomes the norm. Comments get more aggressive. Posts become more performative. And users are drawn into a cycle of outrage. This is especially visible in the realm of politics, social justice, and cultural debates. A simple scroll through your feed during an election cycle or global crisis can quickly show just how divided we are, not just in opinions, but in facts, language, and even basic values. One of the most troubling offshoots of this digital polarization is the rampant spread of misinformation. False claims, manipulated images, and misleading headlines travel at lightning speed, often faster than the truth. Why? Because sensational content generates emotional reactions, which in turn leads to more clicks, more shares, and more visibility. The algorithm rewards engagement, not accuracy. And while fact-checkers work tirelessly to debunk these claims, by the time the truth catches up, the damage is often already done. What's more, cancel culture, the practice of publicly shaming and ostracizing individuals for actions or statements considered offensive, has gained momentum in these hyperpolarized spaces. While accountability is important, the way it unfolds online can often feel like digital mob justice. The complexity of human behavior is reduced to a single post or tweet. People are labeled, shunned, and, at times, erased, not through thoughtful discussion, but through swift judgment. This adds another layer to the already volatile emotional climate on social platforms. It's important to realize that these trends don't exist in a vacuum. They bleed into real life, shaping how people vote, how policies are made, how communities interact, and how public discourse evolves. The rise of tribalism, where users align not just with ideas, but with sides, diminishes our ability to engage in open dialogue. It creates a climate of us versus them, where empathy and nuance are seen as weakness, and winning an argument becomes more important than understanding the other side. So where does that leave us? Are we doomed to live in fragmented digital silos, echoing only what we already believe? Or is there a way to reclaim the internet, to engage more consciously, more critically, and more compassionately? The next time you scroll through your feed, ask yourself, am I being informed or just being reinforced? Challenge yourself to read opposing views. Pause before reposting something sensational. Ask questions, because the more intentional we become about how we interact with digital content, the more we can resist the gravitational pull of polarization and reintroduce dialogue, nuance, and empathy into our collective spaces. Social media is a powerful force, one that shapes not just individual lives, but entire societies. But it's not inherently good or bad. Like any tool, its impact depends on how we use it, and perhaps more importantly, how aware we are of its influence. The business behind the screens. Behind every scroll, like, and share lies a carefully designed system of monetization that fuels the very existence of social media platforms. These platforms aren't merely digital spaces for expression and connection. They are businesses deeply embedded within what is known as the attention economy. The idea is simple but powerful. Your attention is the currency. Every second you spend online, every click you make, every video you watch feeds an ecosystem driven by data and profit. The longer you stay, the more ads they can show you. The more you engage, the more valuable you become, not as a user, but as a product. This leads us to a critical and often overlooked reality. If the product is free, you are the product. It's a phrase you've probably heard before, but have you truly stopped to consider what it means? These platforms track your behavior with precision, your likes, your watch history, your interactions, and package this information to sell to advertisers. It's not just what you post, but how long you pause on a video, which topics make you comment, which reels make you scroll faster or slower. Every action becomes a data point, and with enough data, the algorithm learns you better than you know yourself. This data is then used to target you with content and ads that keep you hooked. You might think your feed is a random mix of entertainment and updates, but it's actually a customized stream designed to maximize your engagement. This is the business model of surveillance capitalism, a term used to describe how companies profit by extracting and analyzing your personal data without explicit consent, and then using it to predict and shape your behavior. It sounds invasive because it is. Yet, it's wrapped in user-friendly design, convenience, and endless entertainment, making it difficult to resist or even notice. Let's take a moment to reflect. Have you ever bought something you didn't really need, but that kept showing up in your feed until it felt impossible not to click buy now? That's not coincidence. It's calculated exposure driven by deep learning algorithms and psychological insights. Your impulses are not just observed, but influenced. This raises serious ethical concerns about manipulation, autonomy, and privacy. Are we truly making decisions for ourselves, or are we being subtly nudged in directions that benefit corporate interests? Moreover, these platforms don't just sell products, they sell influence. Political campaigns, social movements, corporate messaging, everything flows through the same monetized channels. Visibility can be bought, truth can be outpaced by virality. And because the algorithm rewards content that sparks strong emotions, especially anger or outrage, what spreads is often not what's accurate or thoughtful, but what's provocative and polarizing. The end result, a society shaped not by what we need to know, but by what keeps us clicking. There's a term in behavioral economics called choice architecture, the idea that the way options are presented influences the decisions we make. Social media platforms are master architects. The layout of your feed, the placement of ads, the timing of notifications, all these are not random. They're designed to steer your behavior in subtle ways, increasing screen time and deepening engagement. And while this might seem harmless on the surface, it becomes deeply concerning when applied to decisions about health, politics, relationships, or personal identity. So, what can we do about it? First, we need to become more critical and aware users. Understanding the business model behind the screen gives us the power to make more conscious choices. When you realize your attention is being monetized, you begin to ask better questions. Do I really want to spend an hour here? Why am I seeing this content? Is this ad serving me, or am I serving it? Second, we must advocate for greater transparency and regulation. Social media companies are some of the most powerful and least accountable entities in the world today. They wield enormous influence over public opinion, consumer behavior, and even mental health. But with minimal oversight as users, we have a voice. Supporting ethical tech, using privacy tools, and demanding more from platforms can slowly begin to shift the landscape. Finally, let's remind ourselves of the human side of this digital world. Behind every piece of content is a person just like you trying to find meaning, connection, or success. But when those efforts are filtered through a system designed to exploit attention, we risk losing something essential: our agency, our time, our values. So next time you open an app, ask yourself not just what am I doing here, but who profits from me being here? Because the answer might reveal more than you expect. Taking back control, conscious use of social media. Despite the overwhelming presence of social media in our lives, there's a growing movement toward reclaiming our autonomy. It begins with a shift in mindset, recognizing that social media is a tool, not a tyrant. Just like any powerful tool, it can be used to build or to break, to inspire or to distract. The key lies not in total rejection, but in conscious engagement. It's about moving from autopilot to intentional use, from being pulled by the current to steering the ship. In simple terms, you're the driver, not the passenger. Many of us instinctively reach for our phones the moment we wake up or during even the briefest moments of stillness. We scroll without thought, react without pause, and absorb more content in a day than previous generations did in weeks. This is not by accident. It's by design. Social media platforms are engineered to maximize engagement using psychological principles like intermittent reinforcement to keep us hooked. But awareness is the first step toward change. When we understand the mechanisms at play, we can begin to make more empowered choices. So what does conscious use look like in practice? It starts with digital boundaries. That might mean setting app timers, turning off notifications, or deciding on specific times during the day when you'll check social media and sticking to them. It could involve unfollowing accounts that leave you feeling drained, jealous, or inadequate, and curating a feed that uplifts, educates, or entertains in a meaningful way. It might also mean protecting your attention like a valuable asset because it is in the attention economy. Your focus is currency, and you have the right to spend it wisely. Another powerful strategy is to adopt mindful scrolling. Before opening an app, pause and ask yourself, why am I going there right now? What do I hope to get out of it? Is it boredom, loneliness, or the desire for connection? Often we scroll not out of need, but out of habit. Bringing intention to this behavior is not about shame, but about alignment. When our digital actions match our real values, we experience less internal conflict and more emotional clarity. Then there's the idea of screen-free rituals, intentional time away from devices, not as punishment, but as restoration. This could be a morning walk without your phone, a book before bed instead of endless reels, or even a simple meal enjoyed without digital distraction. These moments reconnect us with the present and give our minds a chance to process, breathe, and reset. After all, the richness of life doesn't exist on a screen. It exists in your senses, your relationships, your quiet reflections. Of course, none of this is about perfection. There will be days when you fall back into old habits, and that's okay. The goal isn't to disconnect completely, it's to reconnect meaningfully. The question to reflect on is this: could you be more intentional without completely disconnecting? This doesn't require a digital detox or deleting every app. It just requires presence. It asks you to notice how you feel after time online: energized, informed, inspired, or anxious, numb, and scattered. Small shifts create lasting change. Even a 10% increase in awareness can lead to significantly more peace, focus, and self-respect. The challenge is not technical. It's psychological. It's about reclaiming ownership over your attention, your time, and ultimately your identity. Social media doesn't get to define who you are or how you feel. You do. You get to decide how you show up online and, more importantly, how you show up for yourself. In the end, it's not about quitting the digital world. It's about participating in it with your eyes open and your values intact. It's about remembering that life happens in the now, not just in the feed. You are not a passive consumer. You are a conscious creator. In every post, every pause, every choice is an opportunity to take back control, not just of your screen, but of your story. As we come to the end of this thought-provoking journey through the layers of social media, it's time to pause, not just to look back, but to look within. Over the past few minutes, we've uncovered how deeply intertwined social media has become with our personal identities, mental health, and even the structures of society itself. We've explored how platforms designed for connection often end up distorting it. We've examined how our self-presentation online may not always align with our true selves, how the algorithms shape not only what we see, but what we believe, and how our time and attention have become valuable currency in an economy we rarely think about. But now the real question begins: what do we do with this awareness? How do we, as conscious users of digital tools, move forward with more clarity, balance, and purpose? This is not a call to delete your accounts or go live in a cabin in the woods. Rather, it's an invitation to reevaluate your relationship with the digital world. What kind of online presence truly serves you and not just your image? What kind of content adds meaning rather than merely filling the silence? What kind of boundaries would help you feel more grounded in your real life even as you remain digitally connected? Awareness is powerful, but awareness alone isn't enough. We need agency, the active decision to take control, to scroll with intention, to follow fewer people but listen more deeply, and perhaps to spend more time being than broadcasting. What we need is not necessarily disconnection, but discernment. So ask yourself, what kind of relationship do I want to have with my online world and with my real one? That's not a simple question, and it won't have a quick answer, but starting to ask it might be the first step toward a more balanced, fulfilling, and mentally healthy life. Remember, your digital world is not something happening to you. It's something you're participating in, shaping, and co-creating every time you log in. You have more control than you think, and more responsibility than you often realize. Don't underestimate your power to change your digital habits and with them, your daily experience. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Code Your English, where we explore not only language but life. If you found this reflection valuable, consider listening again, speaking your thoughts aloud to build fluency, or sharing this episode with a friend. And don't forget to subscribe because learning English should be about understanding not just the words, but the world. Until next time, stay curious, stay thoughtful, and most of all, stay